Welcome back. You're still watching Business Morning on Channels Television, and our focus on the program today is on the automobile industry. We're looking at the policy framework in particular and some other issues, of course, that come up as regards the industry. And I have here with me on the program the Director General of the Nigeria Automotive Council, Aminu Jalal, and the Managing Director, Von Nigeria Limited, Tokunbo Aromolaron. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for sticking around. Well, we've talked so much about the policy, which is the focus of the program for today. But let's look at how, a part of the policy actually says that it's going to enhance the competitiveness and increase the productivity of the industry. How will this be achieved, and what will be used to measure it?
Let me just start by saying that initially we talked to some OEMs like Nissan, Toyota, invited them to come to Nigeria and assemble, because we know what we are spending on vehicles, that we have a viable industry, we can support a viable industry, we have enough demand to meet an industry, to support an industry. So they told us that you need to have this comprehensive automotive development plan. So we talk to the stakeholders, both locally and with them, to develop this policy. And also other agencies in government who also have some role to play. So that's how this policy came. Now, the whole objective of the policy is that we hope initially to attract investment by the OEMs, by the assembly plants in the initial 2 years. After that, we will also attract investment by the component manufacturers, so that we will soon have a viable industry that produces not only for our needs, but for the Eco-South region and even probably for Central Africa. But the main focus is local demand. We have enough demand to support an automotive industry. Okay,
but in all of this, you seem to have forgotten that majority of the cars we have on the Nigerian roads are used cars. They're not brand new cars. We can count the amount of brand new cars we see on the road. Now, how is this policy going to address this issue, bearing in mind that the Minister of Trade and Investment says the policy is not going to be like an immediate ban on the importation of used cars?
There will never be a ban.
I can come in here.
Okay.
What you find is that the middle class in Nigeria has virtually been wiped out. And when we came out of university, we all bought brand new cars because there was a middle band and we could afford that. Nigerians have been relegated to the situation where when they are even at their best, they have to purchase cars that have been used 8 years by somebody else abroad. Now we're getting to a situation where we can actually produce cars here that cost fractionally a little more than these Tokunbo cars that are coming in. And what we're saying is that if you can make the local industry competitive, we can actually produce cars at about the same price as people are using to buy 8-year-old cars. And what that means is that we're not importing foreign labor. It's our people that are put to work. It's our expertise that we're using. We can bring the price down to very, very low levels, just because it is also our material that we are converting. What we do is we export our raw materials, and they come back to us value added from other countries, and they're of course more expensive. So we're in a situation where we have said that if we have the right volumes allows us to spread the cost and ensure that per unit of vehicle produced, we have fairly affordable values. But if you are producing only, let me use figures, 200 units, whereas a computer is producing 10,000 units, he's able to spread his costs over that many units, and each vehicle comes out, fairly affordable. So what we are having is a situation where local industry has been killed because we don't have the capacity.
What about increasing the tariff on imported cars? What's come of all of that?
The reason you needed to do that was because you realized that in the system there are inbuilt inefficiencies that are not the fault of the investors in the plants. If you cannot provide what is required to create an industry, you can protect the industry you have. Every country in the world has had to protect its industries by way of tariffs to ensure that when it is at its nascent level, it is it is enabled to develop to the point where, as you provide all these things that are lacking, you can then start to remove these tariff differentials. At that point, you enable your industry to grow up to a level where it can then compete item for item with those that are imported.
Okay, so let me just
that it is not the fault that fundamentals are against them. It is the system. And if you want to develop that capacity, then you've got to do something to make the environment conducive to.
Okay, just before I get to you, I mean, let me just ask: has Vaughan ever undertaken any project to assemble a Nigerian car? That is, every single part. Not that the company would take 30% of whatever component is working with from outside, or 70% as the case may be, but that all the components, starting from the scratch, from the screws to the nuts to everything that will be put together, has any such car actually been assembled or attempted to be assembled here in Nigeria?
There are some components of the vehicle that we do not have the capacity to produce. We cannot produce the engine block. We do not have the wherewithal to produce engines. But other than the powertrain, which is the engine block and the chassis, the exterior of the vehicle hasn't produced that one. We have 2 prototypes that we have put together. If you venture in there, we'll show you our prototypes. We have tried to source virtually 70% of the vehicle outside of the powertrain locally. We have people who are able to produce the window frame and the glassware. We have plastics industry that are able to give us all the plastic parts. We have been able to, we have a fiberglass workshop where we're able to fabricate all the fiberglass components. We have the body work is gotten from tower aluminum. They're able to produce all the body frames for us. And at the end of the day, apart from very specific electronic items that we do not have a facility to produce here, we have 2 of those buses sitting there, and we have modified them in different ways to suit local conditions.
Have they actually been driven on Nigerian roads before?
They are not out commercially or whatever. But what we have done is we have shown capacity that we can substitute those parts for local parts. And as the policy takes hold, we become emboldened to then produce them. Because we also need a supply base. The suppliers who give us all the components we use must now develop it into a more viable and continuous supply.
I was just going to ask.
Otherwise, our supply chain becomes very difficult to manage.
Because, the policy actually says that there's not going to be an outright ban on importation of cars, but then it's going to be more like focusing on promoting investments in affordable, made-in-Nigeria cars that will, in future, minimize the importation of vehicles. So that's why I was asking that how will this, work in the long run, if you've ever attempted to have such a car built here in Nigeria, and how roadworthy
is it? Time, I guess.
Okay.
If you ban second-hand cars immediately, you're going to create a supply problem in the market, and prices will go up. So government is just mindful of the fact that even the automobile assembly plants require time to put all these things to play. Nobody knew when it was going to become reality. So while this is being put to play, then you require that second-hand vehicles to be allowed to operate. I assure you, Nigerians would rather ride in brand new cars than second-hand cars. And as these low-cost vehicles are produced, second-hand cars will die natural deaths.
That's if the low-cost vehicles are as good as they should be and not lesser than what the second-hand vehicle is all about. Sorry,
well, I want you to say that all over the world, the automotive industry normally does a lot of export and import. Virtually no country produces 100% of all the components, because some are specialized, like the airbags, like some of the electronic items.
Like you said, in the engine block and some of
yes,
the
but with time we will do the engine block if we have enough volume. The engine block needs so much volume. If you have small volumes, it's not viable, but by the time you have 50, 60, 100,000 units, you can have an engine block factory. For instance, in South Africa, They do export, they do import.
Right.
So the cycle automotive industry is forex neutral in the sense that what they import is equivalent to what they export. So they don't cost the economy any foreign exchange. So in Nigeria, it's not feasible to do 100% everything because it's more competitive to some items, like I mentioned, airbags, some electronic items, even some catalytic converters for anti-pollution. Usually are made by specialized companies that do a lot of research day to day. But then, if you yourself, the one you produce, you can specialize. Like for instance, we can specialize in plastics because we do have a big plastic industry. We have the raw materials, and we can be supplying other countries with plastics, like Brazil, South Africa. There's some of the other items they are making, South Africa do a lot of this anti-pollution equipment. They can do converters. We can import from there where we will send them plastics. So all over the world, there is this kind of trade-off.
Right.
You specialize in some components, send, then other people specialize in other components and send to you, so that you are, in the end, you strive to be forex neutral.
Yes, as much as possible, because we know that what's happening right now in the markets, in the currency market, the dollarization and the rest of it has caused the CBN to further tighten its monetary policy. So really we wouldn't want to be seeing all of that when we really need to be getting the industry to where it should be, moving it with our own currency and not the foreign currency. Now, part of the policy also talked about the siting of industrial clusters in some of the states in the southwest, east, and the rest of it. How soon is this going to take off? And are we getting any indication from companies, who want to be siting themselves in these cluster zones?
Actually, the industry itself, when you look at it, it's already in these clusters. There are some between Lagos, Oyo, and Ogun. There's already some automotive industry, some assembly operations, and some local content development. There's the same thing in Anambra, the same thing in Kano, Kaduna. So that is why government we want to set up the clusters there so that they can supply the industry there. Cluster is essentially really nothing more or less than this industrial estate, but that all the facilities will be there so that to minimize this infrastructure deficiency. There will be power, there will be water, and so on, and even some other services. We are in negotiation with the state governments to acquire the land and so on. And we hope definitely within the next 1 year, 2 years, we'll see a big progress. So that by the time we want to really focus more on local content in 2 years' time, the clusters will already be there for investors to come in.
Okay, so looking at it now, you say we're supposed to start seeing some progress being made in the next 2 years. Give or take, with the level of unemployment that we have right now, how much of a percentage do we expect, let's say between 1 and 100%, how much of a percentage drop should we expect in terms of unemployment rate in Nigeria?
No, we cannot really right now talk about that in that sense, but what we say, like we say, the focus the first 2 years is to bring the OEMs to come in and start assembly operation. Then we do the local content. But I'll give an example. Fuji used to have 4,000 people. Now they have 250.
250,000 people.
No, 250 only, 250. They have 4,000 employees.
Okay.
And then now they have 250. But at that 4,000, when they are doing about 56,000 units, they have 50 component suppliers that employed a further 10,000. Okay. All just went. Because when their volumes dropped, they dropped to 250 staff, and a lot of the components have to shut down. So we're looking at these figures like that. We are looking at when assembly operation start, and then the component come in.
Yes.
We are looking at employment level of about 300 to 400,000 nationwide, and these are high quality, high paying jobs.
Let me say this: the indirect employment that this industry brings about is even higher than indirect ones. You see, you can count the people on our assembly line, but before you have all of them put to work, there are about twice as many being put to work by other subcontractors and whatever their suppliers. So you get to a situation where, as there is response to this policy, I do not expect to see less than 4 or 5 of those who had left coming back. because nobody wants to lose his market share. So I expect that very soon you'll see everybody knocking on the door and trying to come in. Once there is that little catchment volume, you're going to see people rising up. And you're going to see all the indirect situations also developing to support this. So I assure you that in terms of employment, it's difficult to put figures. Yeah. But if you look at what this industry did in the 80s, it gives you an indication of what we stand to gain in terms of putting people to work and ensuring that we're not shipping all our jobs overseas.
Nigerians are going to be asking so many questions because this is one industry that affects everybody from the top cadre to the lower cadre. But thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me on the program today. It's been very informative and educative having you here on the show.
Thank you very much.
Well, I've been speaking with the Director General of Nigeria Automotive Council, Aminu Jalal, and the Managing Director of Von Nigeria Limited, Tokumbo Arumularo, and we've been looking at the automobile industry and specifically at the policy framework and other issues that have come up as regards developing the automobile industry. It's a policy in the right direction depending on which way you look at it, but it's very all-encompassing, and it will, as much as possible, develop the local content, which is what the federal government is trying to do. All eyes, like I said, will be on this industry like every other one. But that's the show for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Harriet Agbeni.